Tanse, I'm Krisanachkate. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. A grassroots campaign is underway in Northern Ontario to encourage First Nations people to participate in the upcoming federal election. The campaign is based in Sault Ste. Marie, which falls within a riding recently identified by the Assembly of First Nations where Indigenous voters could affect the outcome. APTN's Mike McDonald reports.
The people behind the Indigenous Community Engagement Campaign say First Nations voices and votes matter now more than ever.
We do have, a significant number of our people that are eligible voters, and having said that, we wanted to encourage that population to get out and vote.
Nadine Roach and Kathy Surrett are the co-organizers of the campaign. Surrett says getting First Nations people to vote can be a challenge.
I have heard our own Indigenous people, give their reasons that they don't want to be a part of the colonial elective system in Canada, and they claim not to be Canadian. I'm not Canadian. I am a First Nation person. I'm not Canadian. Okay. That's your belief, but the truth of the matter is that we are Canadians. If we are registered with the federal government of Canada, we are Canadian citizens.
Dean Sayers, who served as chief of nearby Batchewana First Nation for 2 decades, says First Nation citizens should not look at voting as giving up their nationhood.
We find ourselves today in 2025 with the ability to, as an Anishinaabe, to actually vote in the settler elections. Having a vote in the settler election gets us the ability to have a willing party on the other side of the table. So we have that ability without giving up our nationhood. We never succumbed. We never surrendered our inherent ability to be members of the Anishinaabe Nation, and we'll continue to do that, and at the same time have the ability to vote in Canada's election.
Cassidy Lane Wigwas, a local youth and community advocate, says she has recently come to realize the importance of her vote as a First Nations person.
I didn't always consider my vote to be an important one, but now at this time and in all the times before, it is important. That one vote does mean everything, and we do matter as a nation and as First Nations of this land, and we can use that strength and our unity to make this go the way that would benefit us.
The Indigenous Community Engagement Campaign will culminate with a gathering on April 24th at the Delta Sault Ste. Marie Conference Centre. Federal candidates in the Sault Ste. Marie-Algoma riding have been invited to attend. Mike McDonald, APTN National News, Sault Ste. Marie.
Thank you, Mike. There is a new riding in Nova Scotia covering most of Cape Breton and part of mainland Nova Scotia. It's a big area for a well-known Mi'kmaq Liberal candidate, Jaime Baptiste. APTN's Angel Moore reports.
Jaime Baptiste launched his campaign at his headquarters in his home community, the Eskasoni First Nation, this past week. He says so far, the feedback in the new riding is positive.
That I'd be knocking on doors of Conservatives who are saying that they don't trust Poilievre. It's a theme that I've heard across is there's a fear. At the end of this election, there's going to be an important negotiation for the future of our country and the future of our economy.
The new federal riding is called Cape Breton, Canso and Tigonish. Baptiste was the Liberal MP in the former riding of Sydney, Victoria, first winning in 2019 and then being re-elected in 2021. The riding includes 5 Mi'kmaq nations: Buckingeg, Bolidek, Wegogama, Wegmacook, and Eskasoni, which is a fishing community that Baptiste says is concerned about the uncertainty caused by the American tariffs.
Whether it's from the Chinese or from the Americans, are going to have an impact in our communities. And so we're all wondering right now and trying to do our best to ensure that we are ensuring that we're really looking at how we can best ensure stability in the economy.
The 5 Mi'kmaq nations are about 14% of the voters. Eskasoni is the largest Mi'kmaq nation with a population of over 4,000 people living there. Chief Leroy Denny says Indigenous people need to vote.
And I know across the country that there's many ridings that the voices of First Nations can call this election, So our voices, our votes are very important. So I call on all our Mi'kmaq brothers and sisters to get out and vote.
The NDP candidate is Joanna Clark. Last year, she ran in the provincial election but was unsuccessful. She is hopeful for a win on the federal stage and is ready to work with Mi'kmaq communities.
To keep in mind, and it kind of ensures accountability and best practices, and that would be nothing about us without us. So ensuring that the proper partnerships, communication, and connections are made before we see action on those items.
Clark says tariffs are one part of voters' concerns.
So we still have a lot of fragile systems in place in our country, and so I think it's still important not to forget about the state of housing, affordable living, what our access to healthcare looks like, what our access to connectivity looks like.
After multiple requests, Conservative candidate Alan McMaster was not able to make himself available for an interview. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax.
Thank you, Angel. The Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs held a press conference with Manitoba Grand Chiefs in Winnipeg on Wednesday to discuss First Nations federal election priorities. Key issues highlighted included treaty implementation, Jordan's Principle, public safety, and healthcare. The panel included AMC Grand Chief Kyra Wilson, SCO Grand Chief Jerry Daniels, MKO Grand Chief Garrison Setti. The panelists urged candidates to prioritize funding for First Nations-led policing and healthcare to address gaps in services and systemic racism. They're also demanding action on the bureaucratic mismanagement of Jordan's Principle. The Grand Chiefs encouraged First Nations electors to head to the polls and educate themselves on party platforms. On the topic of treaty implementation, Setti had this to say.
The failure for those treaties to be implemented is the cause of many of the social issues we face in our nations. And it's time for governments to be true to their constitution. It's legal, it's binding, but no government has ever really enforced these treaties. Now is the time to implement our treaties.
Make an informed vote. Take a look at the evidence. Next time a federal election comes, I don't want to be sitting here, or I don't want the Grand Chief of our 11 nations to be sitting here talking about the same issues with no change. Our people need change.
It's Thursday, and that means Fraser Needham joins us now from Ottawa to tell us what's ahead on this week's Nation to Nation. Fraser?
Coming up after the evening news, Indigenous communications expert Cam Holmstrom is here to give us his thoughts on how the 2025 federal election campaign is going. Also, pollster Keto Maggie also drops by to talk about why some Indigenous voters are still sticking with the NDP in this campaign, while many of the party's non-Indigenous supporters have flocked to the Liberals. And we talked to the CEO of the Somerset West Community Health Centre about why the organization has decided to shut down its supervised consumption site, even though they have a court injunction that says it doesn't have to. All this ahead on Nation to Nation.
Thank you, Fraser. We now want to tell you about this week's third web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, would you be more likely to vote for a candidate because they're Indigenous, despite what political party they represent? Your answers are yes or no. Have your say by going to www.aptnnews.ca, and the poll section is on the right-hand side of the homepage. RCMP in British Columbia are warning northern Indigenous communities and businesses about an elaborate scam they say is targeting them after more than $3 million was stolen. The RCMP would not say which First Nations or businesses lost the $3 million, but did say evidence suggests that similar frauds have been ongoing nationwide for the past 15 months. They say the schemes involve misrepresentation, the use of technology, and the exploitation of trust and community resources, and that the fraudsters will pose as victims, vendors, consultants, or contractors to gain access to business contracts and financial transaction records. And they use fraudulent email accounts that resemble legitimate vendors or community organizations. They then request or provide banking information updates and redirect payments to accounts under their control. RCMP are urging Indigenous businesses and governments to be vigilant, always verify credentials, and to report any suspicious activity. A family in Saskatoon has been fighting to halt the adoption of Indigenous children in a non-Indigenous system. That story when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back. A family in Saskatoon is fighting to stop the adoption of Indigenous children that are sent to non-Indigenous system and bring the children who are already in the system home. APTN video journalist Rachel May spoke with the family about their vision for change.
I'd like them to hear that they got to stop this, that they got to stop hurting people and taking kids away from families who love them.
As a 60 Scoop survivor, Joanne Ebach understands some of the realities of living in care and wanted to protect her young family members from experiencing the same fate. She is speaking up now, hoping to stop the removal of children from loving homes.
I'm ready to fight because I'm tired of social services walking in our family's life and just walking over us and ruining children.
Ebach's own child, Jazz Morgan, was taken away from her in 1988 because of a birth alert. Jazz was adopted by another family less than a year later. Jazz says they were abused while living with this adoptive family. Jazz says they're determined to make sure children in care know that adults are fighting for them to come home to their families.
There's just this healing that needs to happen in our families too, that's like embodying physically, because we've just been quiet for so long and been holding this inside.
Morgan now leads an Indigenous policy research group called Deadly Collective. Deadly Collective says they are pursuing legal action against the Saskatchewan Ministry of Social Services and encourage everyone to advocate for Indigenous family-centered foster care and adoption.
Like, it's not even about money. It's just about letting all the kids know someone's fighting for them, and that like this will have a bigger epistemological impact.
For their part, Saskatchewan's Ministry of Social Services sent an emailed statement. It says, in part, the government of Saskatchewan recognizes Canada's long and painful history of policies that impact Indigenous families. We work closely with our Indigenous partners, communities, bands, and First Nations child and family services agencies to help keep families together, build capacity for extended family caregivers, and keep children connected to their culture and community. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Now to New Zealand, where the Federation of Maori Authorities Business Summit recently held in Hamilton brought together business leaders from across Aotearoa to discuss key issues affecting their industries. One prominent topic discussed was the potential impact of President Donald Trump's announcement of a 10% tariff, with members reflecting on what this could mean for Maori businesses and the wider export sector. Here is a report from our friends at NITV News.
The Trump tariff approach is primarily designed with the US interests at heart, and if I'm to understand the motivations behind it, it's to ensure that domestic US manufacturing can continue to grow. But you've got to look at the signals that it sends the world, because there will be retaliative tariffs. It will constrain some key areas where it's not just one supply chain between two countries. It's a very complex set of arrangements in terms of supply chains, so it may have a perverse effect on the US in terms of stability, where people may look to, if not to the US, to buffer some of the economic impacts of tariffs on their domestic economy.
FOMA represents a good deal of the Māori exporting profile for Aotearoa, New Zealand. We know that we either export or die as a nation, and so our job now is to look at the world market, to look at the trade arrangements that are in place now and how we can benefit from those.
He's got a view that the trade system's not fair to the US, and he wants to rebalance it. Now, whether his tariff policy achieves it, I doubt very much.
We need to think more carefully about how we do business and who with, and where we decide to do business. We also have a number of trade arrangements that are in place that protects market access that isn't in the North America region. And so for FOMA members, we'll be looking more to those opportunities in those markets where trade arrangements are more preferable for us to do business.
For our whānau is that as a small country, we can't be reliant on any one country. We have to buffer our interests by having agreements with a range of countries to be able to get our products here from Aotearoa out and across the globe at the best price possible, hopefully.
To Australia now, where housing, employment and remote road infrastructure are key issues for voters in remote regions of the Northern Territory. As campaigning continues for the upcoming federal election on May 3rd there, the Minister for Indigenous Australians took her pitch to voters this week. NITV correspondent Emma Calloway traveled to the community of Ramingining, located about 600 kilometers east of Darwin. It sits in the seat of Lingiari, which is one of the most marginal communities in the country, held by Labor by less than 1%.
Labor MPs eager to snap the attention of voters in remote NT.
He's ready to jump.
Indigenous rangers here demonstrating new ways of traditional practices for crocodile trading.
Collecting eggs, we use a traditional way because we can commit ourselves to them, talk to them and say hello to the country where we are.
A catch for generating jobs in the community.
I like it, and it's creating more jobs for people that are coming out from school, and this is the best,
Employment on country is just one of the issues front of mind for people here, with hopes to see greater improvements to housing and remote road infrastructure.
When the wet season time, there's a big amount of water on the road, along the road, and we had sometimes we have problem with the car, every day. They break or get broke.
I live in outstation with not good house. So maybe I need to ask them for building a new house in outstation.
The Arafura Swamp Ranger program is funded by federal government grants, part of a commitment to double the number of Indigenous rangers by the end of the decade.
It's about jobs, to be able to have fulfilling jobs that make you feel worthwhile. It's beautiful to be able to do that in Caring for Country in the Ranger program.
Ramingining is a long way from Canberra, but it's here in the bush. The Labor government hoped to win the vote of First Nations constituents with a firm focus on economic development for remote communities. Today in Melbourne, Peter Dutton campaigning on the cost of living and efficiency cuts to the public service. The coalition leader wouldn't be drawn on questions about whether he would make cuts to the Indigenous Affairs portfolio.
Families are under pressure in their own budgets and they expect the government, the federal government, to spend money wisely. And so that's the approach that we've taken.
Simply throwing hundreds of millions of dollars at the issue is not addressing those concerns. In order to do this audit is to provide a level of accountability to determine where the outcomes actually exist and where they're failing.
Both major parties wrestling for votes in what's set to be a tight election. Emma Kellaway, NITV News.
Our Tina House recently spoke to Miss Universe Canada Ashley Collingbull. That interview after the break. Starting on the east, Fredericton 6, Halifax 4 in sun. The Grand River -8, and Ujuak -7. Quebec City 3, Gaspé 1. Ottawa 4, Toronto 5. Sudbury -1, Thunder Bay 2. Norway House 3, Thompson 4. 4 in Gimli, Barons River Sun and 3. Regina 6, Saskatoon 5. Buffalo Narrows 7, Meadow Lake 8. Rain in Peace River at 15, Fort McMurray 14. Rain in Lethbridge at 18, partly cloudy in Medicine Hat at 20. 19 in Kamloops, Campbell River 14. Fort Nelson 11, Prince Rupert 8. Watson Lake 8, Beaver Creek 6. 12 in Fort Simpson, Yellowknife 4. -5 in Palatuk, Colville Lake 0. -5 in Baker Lake, Chesterfield -3. And Arctic Bay -14, Aglulik -10. Thanks for staying with us. The 32nd annual Inspire Awards are in Vancouver this year, and leading up to the awards show is a national youth conference called SOAR, where youth get to hear from other inspiring Indigenous people. Our APTN video journalist Tina House joins us from the event.
Thank you. We're here in downtown Vancouver as Inspire is currently taking place. Joining me today is Ashley Callingbull, Miss Universe Canada. Ashley, nice to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Excited.
And you're hosting the award show tomorrow night. Tell me about that.
Yes, so I'm hosting the awards tomorrow, and it's a big celebration of all the Indigenous excellence and talent we have in our country, but also sharing their stories and of what they've overcome and how they are champions in their own right. And it's all about really showing the next generation that we can become anything that we want to be.
Absolutely. There's been so many people honored over the years, including yourself.
Yeah.
Tell me about when you were honored here.
When I was honored, I still wear my pin. It's something I'm really proud of. I received the Youth Award, and to receive that at such a young age and know that I had that impact, it makes me think, like, what else can I do? Who else can I open the door for? So it's really about empowering the next generation and creating more opportunity for other people. So this has created a lot of opportunity for me.
Well, speaking of creating opportunity, I mean, you're now competing worldwide. You I saw you down in Mexico competing for the big title. Tell me about that experience for you.
Well, I ended up making history as the first Indigenous woman to compete at Miss Universe. It's something I'm really proud of. I won't be the last. That's the most important thing. But I came top 12 at Miss Universe, and that was one of the hardest things because there are 130 women competing from around the world, and you automatically make the cut down to top 30. So it was really eye-opening for me. I learned a lot about myself, but I thought I represented like my nation and my people with pride and with honor, and that's the best part for me.
That's beautiful. Now tell me about the next couple days. Now today there's lots of workshops happening for youth. Tell me a bit about that.
So yesterday there was speeches, and today there's workshops, there's a career fair going on. There's a lot of opportunity for the kids to connect and learn from the people that are speaking. This is their opportunity to really ask questions, find who they want to be, and maybe step out of their comfort zone and see maybe I want to try that, and learn all these inspiring messages of to never give up.
Beautiful, never give up. I like that. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Nice to see you. Congratulations on all your success. We're also very proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate
and we'll see you on the stage tomorrow night at the awards show.
Yes.
Back to you in studio.
Thank you, Tina and Ashley. That's your daytime newscast for this Thursday, April 10th. We're back again with your evening newscast in a few hours. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again. Excellent.